It's good that actually you know how chat shows work, because you're fucking better at it than I am. They're doing like the interstitial beats that bring it on. All right, my next guest is Calley Means, the founder of True Med and former consultant for food and pharma companies, who is now exposing practices that food companies and pharma companies use to weaponize our health, keeping us sick, whether it's through bad food, then drugging us up. Please welcome Mary. He just fucking snuck in like an assassin. Calley Means. Calley, thanks very much for joining us. Welcome to Community Conversations, I think it's called now. Welcome to Community Conversations.
Pumped to be here, Russell.
Do you like it in Wales? It's a good country, isn't it?
It's an amazing country.
Charlotte's in charge. She's doing education and devolution. Calley, tell us, mate, about like your experiences in the food industry, and in particular what we should be most aware of as we continue to glut ourselves on what seemed to be poisons. When we met before, chatting on my show, Stay Free with Russell Brand, the thing that blew my little socks off was when you said that most of the stuff we're eating is basically killing us, like highly processed syrups and dodgy sugars, and that diabetes and heart disease and cancer and all these things would just get a lot better if we were aware of a few simple facts. Now that Charlotte has laid out the ground telling us that our education system needs to be changed and we should be all devolving down into anarcho-syndicalist federations, will you tell us what we should be eating? And how you know all this stuff as well. You know, go on.
So, Russell, being here with critical thinkers, I just want to take stock back up, and I think we're in a very important societal moment that ties to this topic. We're coming off the biggest public policy disaster in our lifetimes, which was the COVID response.
Yeah.
Woo! And COVID, as we've increasingly determined, but knew very early, COVID deaths is essentially a foodborne illness. If you ate healthy, were metabolically healthy, you had a very low chance of dying of COVID. Yet, we opened the bars and we closed the gyms. We told kids to wear masks. We spent every ounce of the media microphone and the government microphone telling us to take a pharmaceutical product and not go out in the sun, not eat healthy, not exercise. We missed a generational moment. We locked kids inside during their developmental years to a degree that 25% of children, according to the US and EU health authorities, contemplated suicide during COVID. And today...
Don't get that on Graham Norton. Who go, criminal! As you sort of tell us that the whole COVID pandemic has been a massive health disaster. It's brilliant how you unpack this. Tell us more, go on.
Yeah, so just take...
And your bomber jacket's nice.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Russell.
Oh, you're kind of cute. I've seen that now.
We're matching, lovely
He's a
forest
little
green.
bit cute.
But I've been reflecting on kids, and I think taking from COVID, what we have happening with kids' health is the biggest issue in the world. 30% of U.S. kids are pre-diabetic, 50% are obese or overweight, 20% have fatty liver disease, 40% of high school seniors qualify as having a mental health disorder, and this is tied to food. 85% of deaths and healthcare costs, both in the EU and the U.S., are tied to preventable conditions that have food and metabolic habits at their underpinning. And the question is, and this is what I saw working for pharma early on and food companies, is why aren't we talking about this? Why is the media so uncurious about this? And working for the food and the pharma companies, we directed advertising dollars to news, not to influence consumers, this is key, but to influence the news itself. So you have...
I didn't know that. Did you not know that already? They're spending advertising dollars, not so that we receive the advertising message, but so that the news reports favorably on those subjects.
This is the key. The largest company in Europe is about to be Novo Nordisk. It's about to pass LVMH. Healthcare is the largest industry in the EU. It's the largest industry in the United States. Largest advertiser spender. Food's not far behind. The two largest lobbying industries in both areas is the food and pharma. And yes, when it comes to advertising, it's not to influence as much the consumers, it's to influence the information source. So the information sources, when we're all getting ravaged by relatively simple foodborne illnesses, are telling us that RFK is not a viable candidate. They're telling us that everyone here is a conspiracy theorist. They're telling us that we're questioning the science to even ask a question of our pediatricians when our kids are getting slaughtered. So this is by design. Working for food and pharma companies, it's rigging institutions of trust. And I am hopeful, Russell. We've got a vanguard coming. We've got leaders coming. You and many others in independent media. And I think there is legitimate fear among the status quo.
I think so. I think they intrude. Sometimes Calley means when it seems daunting to cower in the shadows of these Goliaths. I note how hard they work to keep us ignorant, dumb and poisoned, and I glory in their endeavour. For I know that they cast a shadow, but there is might and light and the Nick Mulvey double rainbow. Nice one, mate. Tell us that thing. What are the main foods we should definitely fuck right off to make ourselves healthier?
So, there's 3 ingredients that make up the bulk of our diet right now. So there's 3 ingredients that go into ultra-processed food. So 100 years ago, almost 0% of our diet was ultra-processed food. We ate natural food. And today, it's about 70%. And those 3 ingredients are, number one, and we all know about this, but added sugar. But I don't think we fully understand. A child today is eating 100 times more sugar than they did 100 years ago. It is absolutely assaulting their cells. And what is a unique weapon of mass destruction for the health of children particularly is liquid sugar. And this is a new phenomenon. This is relatively new. So you can imagine you're eating a piece of fruit, you've got fiber, it takes a while to eat. And
sorry, my children are actually trying to come on.
Amazing.
Probably because they're fucking high on sugar. Please welcome Mabel and Peggy if you want to come on. This is why we need Charlotte Church schools to educate these children properly. You're right. Now, what Calley Means is just telling us is about that sugar in food is dangerous. Do you like sugar? Yeah. Do you like sugar?
Yes.
All right. So, Calley, how should we be more judicious in the way that we feed children and give them access to sugar, mate?
I think parents all have this deck stacked against them. The U.S. government and the EU actually says 10% of the diet for children. It's okay to be sugar. It's okay to be added sugar. 95% of the panel in the U.S. that made those recommendations were paid for by food or pharma companies, and the U.S. as a condition of research partnerships with other countries ensures that their regulatory agencies have the same dietary guidelines because of all the influence of processed food. So we are actually recommending for parents to give their young children sugar, and we are subsidizing processed food over $100 billion a year in the United States. So sugar is number one. Seed oils are industrial byproducts created by John D. Rockefeller early in the 1900s as a byproduct, it's oil lubricant essentially. And those are much cheaper than natural fats and are now the top source of calories in America, and I'm sure very similar here. And then highly processed grains. It's a key ingredient in almost every food we eat, and the processing takes the fiber off, makes the item shelf stable, but robs it of nutritional value. So those 3 ingredients are all created in the past 100 years, thank you. And we're eating things that are just not, our body's not biologically made to eat, and we're all getting sick. And you should have the healthcare industry speaking out about this, but the problem is that healthcare makes money when people are sicker, fatter, more depressed, and more infertile. And they lose money when we look at the sun, listen to Wim Hof, eat well, exercise, manage our stress, meditate. Those are disruptive messages.
Can I just say something here? I have just read...
Like a proper chat show now. Except for the children. And the fact that we're saying bring down the government and big pharma and food. But aside from that, proper chat show. Sorry, Charlotte, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I have just read Ultra Processed People, which is a book all about this. And literally, I mean, I have been terrible at being able to control anything to do with my diet. Like, I was proper sugar, brought up on it, basically teddy bear spam, microchips and Kit Kats. That was my nutritional diet growing up. And so, as an adult, I just couldn't regulate it. I couldn't find a way. But since listening to that book, and I listened to it because the science is dense, so I listened to it. But since listening to that, I've changed my diet overnight. And you know what's happened? I don't buy that sort of stuff. That stuff's not in the house anymore, so the kids hardly eat it either. So they do, they will go out and they'll get bits and bobs, but way, way less than we used to have, where we used to go to the shop every night and get, treats and all that. So sorry, I just wanted
like
to
that
say.
you've given that contribution as well, because it is ultimately, we're gonna, like, this place, this community, this event could become like a right little shindig of good intentions, couldn't it? You could come here, meditate, do a bunch of breath work, do some Brazilian jiu-jitsu, fall in love with Hiron Gracie, listen to some fantastic information from brilliant people, then just go home and smash it like a bag of Monster Munch and smoke some crack. Like, that's how I come down after a festival. But the fact is that we're living in a, like, I suppose part of the point of what we're discussing is that we live within a grid of interlocking systems, and that's why what I think, don't you fucking upstage me, you little bastards. Already, at their age. What chance do I have? Which one is it? Is it this one or this one? Both of them. Don't use my single if they're going to steal it. Stay wide. No, do what you want, It's a laughter. Laughter is brilliant, isn't it? But like, that's where we're going to experience it. We're going to go back home and we're going to reach for the crunchy nut cornflakes, aren't we, for God's sake, like when it happens. Mate, like, what I think is amazing, Calley, is that your experience and understanding comes from actually working within the food industry, in it that you were like at Coca-Cola doing stuff, like mixing in the secret ingredient, and why did they take the cocaine out? That was the best bit!
Might have been safer than the sugar that's in it now.
Yeah, go on. How did you come to have all of this knowledge, and how do you find yourself in this position, mate?
Yeah, so it's a story that kind of gives the playbook. But early in my career, I was working on political campaigns, and then found myself working in consulting, and inevitably working with bipartisan people across the two biggest spenders in D.C. Pharma spends 5 times more than the oil industry on lobbying, and number 2 is food. And just real quick, and we talk about personal responsibility, how it's hard to stay healthy. I'm a big fan of personal responsibility, but 80% of Americans being overweight or obese, 50% being pre-diabetic or diabetic, there's something systemic happening. And I don't actually like that argument, because the deck is stacked against the American people. And an example working for Coke is they wanted to keep food stamp spending, which is the nutritional program for 15% of the lowest income Americans, a $140 billion program. The number one item spent on food stamps, which again, 15% of the American people depend on for food, is soda. 10% of all money. And my job was to help keep that when it was being debated, and people on both sides were saying that doesn't make any sense. And we paid people that people trust. We paid the NAACP, a leading civil rights group, who said that it was racist to take away choice, to take away Coke. And we paid medical groups, the American Diabetes Association, which sets the standard of care for the United States and around the world on diabetes management, accepted millions of dollars from Coke and was silent on the issue. We paid the media, who was completely disinterested in this issue, and we paid researchers, academic researchers who had researched nutrition from Oxford to Harvard to Stanford, who we all paid, receive 11 times more money from food companies than they do from government agencies. And they accepted money, and to this day are putting out studies questioning whether sugar causes obesity, which then were promptly used to confuse the issue with members of Congress. It's about rigging institutions of trust, Russell. They're looking to call people racist. They're looking to call people sexist. They're looking to shut down debate. And there's a movement happening where people are waking up and saying that's bullshit. We need truth. We need free speech.
Well done. I think once more we are reminded of the necessary rigour in overcoming personal prejudice and bigotry, precisely so that we can have these conversations certain in the knowledge that we hold no prejudices against people's individual cultural freedom or their racial or religious heritage or beliefs. It's absolutely necessary to be able to advance this conversation. I'm struck, Calley, that you have said a number of times that many of the institutions that are charged with regulatory responsibility accept money from people that shouldn't be able to donate. I know that the Diabetes Association takes money from like craft and food companies that make money from cheap foods. I was astonished that when I learned that the things that we thought were food groups, and Charlotte just explained that you thought that the food groups were like sort of skips and like spam and wine gums.
Yeah.
Like, but even the stuff we were told, like bread and cheese and stuff, So it's not what you're meant to actually eat, it's what is easy to manufacture, or agriculture can produce these foods easily and cheaply. I mention this because Helena Norberg-Hodge will be speaking here at some point, I think, tomorrow. And Helena, for 30, 40, 50 years, has been talking about the significance of localization, where possible growing food that is going to be eaten where it has been grown, the necessity to trade only when it's unavoidable, and something that I quote a lot is Gandhi, when the British Empire were finally kicked out of India, said there's no point kicking the British out, then replicating the systems that they have imposed upon us. India is a country of 70,000 villages, each should be fully autonomous, trading only when necessary, should be fully democratic. What they have come to realize now is that the technology and communication revolution mean there is no need for centralization. It is possible to have absolute democracy. With cryptocurrencies, we can trade outside of their centralized currency authority. We could free ourselves from debt economy. And with the kind of information that is being shared here, whether it is Charlotte and her ability to awaken from the dream of celebrity and establish valuable new ways of educating children in an unabashed, authentic, earthy way, or Calley using his experiences inside these institutions to educate us about the reality and the fact that we do have a personal choice about what we eat and what we put into our bodies, and that as long as there's centralization at the corporate private level or at the state level, because essentially it's one hydra, it's a two-headed beast at this point. Democracy does not represent us against corporate interest, it facilitates corporate interest against us. What about that? 20 years off the crack and smack. Okay, that's fantastic, Calley. Why don't we welcome our next guest.